Hello again, tutorial time, and today we're going to be jumping into Cavalry and remaking something that I saw on Instagram. You can see what I've made on this side of the screen here, and it involves a kind of selection of duplicators, 2 duplicators to be precise, some colour arrays, some string arrays, a value solver, and I kind of think that's about it really. It ended up being a simpler composition than I kind of gave it credit for initially. Not to say that it's kind of simple, it's elegant in the way that it was made, and the original creator was hang on, where's my mouse gone? Here we are. Was a gentleman who is on Instagram, and his handle is Rob Farmer XYZ, and seriously recommend following and checking out some of the bits on here, not just this Bloomberg thing that we're going to kind of be looking at remaking, but just some of the other stuff as well. I mean, I think I'd initially seen this, and then I started following him and made some really quality work on that page. So definitely check it out, because it's great to kind of almost try and reverse engineer some of these things in Cavalry. So going back to the composition, we'll remake this in. It's not going to be an exact facsimile of the reference, but it's just more a kind of delving into some of the techniques and how we can use them, and branching out a little bit from those kind of techniques that we see in his video as well. Let me do a very quick breakdown of just what we can kind of see in the composition as is. Now, if we turn on this video, we'll be able to see, if we play through, we get let me turn off caching here. It's a video of handcuffs rotating in kind of 3D space. Now, the way that you could do that in Cavalry is bring in a kind of grayscale video or 3D render of handcuffs rotating, and we can then use an image sampler to run what we're doing. And we do that, but I didn't want to get into the weeds with using 3D models. So I made something in Cavalry that we can then bring back into Cavalry to drive this animation, and we'll get more into that later. But we will build this all back up from scratch, essentially stringing, kind of daisy chaining string arrays, color arrays, kind of switching between those with noise. So there's going to be a lot of noise and things like that. So definitely brush up on the documentation on Cavalry for noises, color arrays, value arrays, if you want a good base understanding of how these things are going to work. Outside of that, thank you for everyone watching the other tutorials. I had some good feedback. I had some complainers as well, fair complaints about the audio quality. So I bought a ridiculously hench microphone so we can talk properly, hopefully, and so people can hear me, because I realise I'm not the most eloquent or clear when I'm speaking. And we got a new camera as well, so you can kind of see my face for these intro bits, because people weren't saying it, but I know they were dying for a more HD version of my face. So we'll dive into this, and I'll try and assume no prior knowledge, and I'll try and talk through some of the techniques, kind of from base level up, just so if this is the first thing you're watching, hopefully you won't get left behind or lost. So bear with me. If you're kind of more experienced, you'll know some of the shortcuts and things like that, but it's for the benefit of maybe those who are just coming to this new, and it's always nice to kind of get the basics, go over the basics. It's never a bad thing. Okay, so the next stage we'll jump in, we'll see kind of a more full Cavalry window, and we can start rebuilding this together. Okay, back in the game. So as we can see here, I downloaded the video from Instagram just so I could look at the still frames. And again, it's always advisable if you are trying to rebuild something, reverse engineer it, not to copy it and like say it's your own, but if you want to get into the nuts and bolts of how something works, it's really helpful to watch it frame by frame so you can be able to pause it. So I'd recommend, if you're trying to do something similar to this, where you're looking at something that does exist and you want to know how it was made, to try and, if you can, get the video and bring it into Cavalry or After Effects, whatever, so you can really kind of just drill down into what it is that you're looking at. And so we can see here straight away, essentially what we have is, it's a bunch of boxes with text contained within the boxes, and then those boxes change colour. And there are two different kinds of boxes. There's a long box and there's a small box. The long box is double the width of the small, so that makes it easy for us because we can do that with kind of inbuilt expressions in Cavalry. And then it's just a bunch of kind of colour switching, and the there we are. Shouldn't have shown everybody that. That's fine. I'm sure there's a good explanation. And so the colours were really nice. I mean, just from that alone, it was a worthwhile thing, me breaking down, because I love the colour palette, and this is how you kind of get better overall at software, I think, is look at things that you like, try and remake it, and kind of absorb some of what it took to make that, and breathe it in, and then essentially it kind of imbues you with just an essence of its greatness. So and that's what hopefully you'll do doing these tutorials, is maybe just kind of pull away some of like Rob Farmer's just like nice aesthetic here, and you can maybe just lace that in when you're cooking, and it'll just elevate you, and hopefully me as well. We'll see, only time will tell. So yeah, let's dive in and kind of start rebuilding what we need to do. So first thing I did was make a 4x5 composition, so 1080 wide, 1350 high, and then we want to get a cube in here, right? So, and the way we can do this is go, so 1080 1350, we'll make a cube that's, well, a rectangle that's exactly the size of our composition, and then we'll just like divide it by a certain amount. So let's go 20 here and then 40 here, and again, don't forget you can do expressions kind of directly in these input boxes, so you can put a dash for, no, not a dash, a forward slash for divide, and an asterisk for multiplication, which is nice and easy, so you don't have to, if you're bad at math like me, you don't have to open a calculator app. So great, we've got our rectangle shape, and we can drop it into a group and call it small cube. Yeah, small cube group. Oh no, cell, right? Because it's like a spreadsheet. So let's do cells. Small cell, and we'll kind of do all of our small cell stuff purple, plum, and we'll drop it in a duplicator, and again call it small cell array. I know it's not an array, but it's a nice word to spell, and it's quicker than duplicator. So now we've got our kind of duplications here. We want to set it to step because we know exactly how wide it is and how tall it is. So we can grab this size and just drop it here and go grid size. And it's going to give us an exact step. So we don't need to mess around with that. If we increase the size or we decide we want to change it, it'll be fine. Because we know we took the composition and divided it by 20 and 40, we can put 20 in the X and then 40 in the Y, and it will give us our exact grid. Now we know we need it to not be grey for a start, so let's make it white, but white's a little bit harsh, so let's just turn it down so I'm not burning my retinas out. And it does have a stroke on it, but it's kind of like a slightly dark grey. I mean, that looks okay. We'll go with that for now. And then that's essentially what we've got for our small cell array. Okay, and then we need large cell array and large cell. Perfect. And let's turn our large cell to something different, like green. Let's just do greens here. So we know what we're looking at. There we go. And so the large cell we know is double the width, but the exact same height. So what we want to do, come to our, let's just call it small cell, otherwise it'll get confusing. Large cell, and let's change that to, large cell group. It does help, small cell group, if you name stuff in a way that makes sense, because when we come back to this in like 3 months, 4 months time, and God forbid we have to give it to someone else to look at, and they need to know what's happening, we need to know what's happening, so labeling what you've got as you go, trust me, it is a lifesaver later on, even if you know now what's going on, because you won't. If you open this up in 4 months, it will be confusing. Okay, great. So we can take our small cell value, because we know this is 54, and we can pipe it into here, and we go rectangle size width, boom. So now we're essentially getting the same in there, but we know we don't want that. We want to times it by 2. So if we come into the size, right click on size, add expression, and just go asterisk 2, we will get a cell that is immediately double the width. But now we've got double the amount of kind of cells that we need, because we need to now divide the amount of cells we've got by 2. So what we can do is go 10 in here, or just so I can show you another way of doing this, we can add a math node. Now again, for those of you new at Cavalry, if you hold command full stop, option alt full stop on Mac command, it'll bring up this little menu, context menu, like in Cinema 4D with Shift C, or After Effects with DirectFX. If you do Control Spacebar, it kind of gives you access to effects and things. If you're on Windows, it's Control full stop, and it'll give you this little menu here that I'm using. And then if you just type math, it'll pop it up. And then we've got math here. So what we can do is we can get the X value, which is what we know we need half of, drop it into, oh, no we don't, we drop it into the math first, and then we go in here and we select the operation that we want, and we want to divide it, and we want to divide it by 2 to give us 10 in the X, and then we want to drop it in this small cell array and do grid size, hang on, grid count. What am I like? Sorry guys. Let's get this, and we drop it in here, and we go grid count. There we are. Happy days. So now we're getting 10. So now we've got 2 exactly. Sorry, my wife is on holiday and she's sending me text messages. Okay, all good. There we are. So we've got a small cell array and a large cell array, kind of doing that dynamically. So if we change, just to show you why we've linked it up this way, if we start changing stuff, everything changes nicely, which is nice to do, although the height doesn't, because we haven't linked that up, but we don't need to worry about that. So let's turn off the large cell array for now. We've built it and we know it's got the functionality that we need because we've just kind of linked stuff up. But there's stuff we need to add in to these cells. For a start, it needs a text, and secondary, it needs a secondary color that they can flick to between white and that kind of pale color. So let's add a color array. Color array, there we go. And we want 2 inputs. We want just a slight off-white, and we want quite a pale kind of, I don't even know what kind of color that is, indigo color, I suppose. And we want to drop it down into our small cell and bang it in the fill color. Now, by default, what that does is alternate. Every duplicate is white, other color, white, other color. But obviously we don't want that, and as I said before, we're going to be using noise a hell of a lot. So turn off auto index and right click on your index and then add a noise. Now by default, noise is going to come in with kind of a value of -10 to 10, and we don't want that. We want a binary sort, so we only need, you can use -10 to 10, it's essentially the same, but it's just more information that we need. So that's what we want to do. 0, 1. But you notice we've got way too many kind of blue, we've got too many blue cells. And if we look at our reference here, there's not as many. So what we need to do is come in and kind of create a bias towards having less. So if we do 0.5, we'll see that we get rid of the blue entirely, because we're never reaching the threshold we need for, we don't reach this threshold we need to see any blue, because it's past 0.5. So if we go 0.55, we'll see we have a few blue, but it's not too many, and then 0.6, and then maybe let's do 0.65. And now, if we press play, we'll see we've got a random shifting assortment of cubes. Now, the colors don't seem right to me. It seems a bit too saturated, so let's turn that down. That seems a little bit more healthy. Great. And the noise type, you can have it whatever. Cellular noise is kind of good for this, because we know we don't have values to interpolate through. It's just 0 and 1 essentially. There's a switch, so cellular noise is good for that, like a kind of square square wave. So great, that looks all right, but now we've got too many blues. Great, so now we've got a cool little kind of shifting array of cubes. And then I can't remember, so yeah, I did see that none of these, if we play this, I don't think any of the longer cells ever turn blue, so we don't need to add that into the fill color. Great, so now we need to add a text shape, because that is another big part of this, is a text shape. So because we've put our small cell inside of a group, it means we don't need to parent things inside of it to have it be duplicated. We can just drop this text shape directly into our small cell group, and we'll see it then duplicated across the board. And let's call this small cell text. Small cell text, there we are. There we go. I think I use biotiff for this, so we'll continue with that, and we don't need anything. In fact, I'll just put a single character in there for now so we can see what's actually happening. And we want to have everything kind of centralized, so if you kind of go middle, turn on auto here, the text box size it's irrelevant for what we're doing, so we'll just make it automatic. And then shrink your boy down here so he's, you know, kind of sitting within the boundaries, and let's just make it black. So now we're seeing essentially just an array of A's, but we don't want that. We want to add a different array. We want to add some variation, and so we want a string array. And a string array is just a list of text inputs. That's what it is. And I know from having looked at the reference that what we want in these ones are plus signs and dollar signs. And again, as with the blue and white shading of the boxes, we want noise for this. Now again, if we come in here and there's something here called use layer as seed, it just means we don't need to change the layer for every single noise that we're using. So it's a good idea to just, if you're using lots of noises, to add layer as seed, because it will, without needing to change the seed, it'll kind of give you variation. So we don't then, because if we hadn't done that, we use the same exact noise for both the color and the text, we then say only see a dollar sign in a blue box, and we don't want that. We want there to be endless kind of variation. Okay, great. So again, as with the noise before, we want 0, 1. We want a cellular noise, and let's do 1.2. And then if we play that, we'll see we're getting just a load of shift-in values between plus and dollar signs, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, cool. So that's kind of boxed off now. We've got that sorted, but what about these large cells here? So they may not change color, but they've kind of got like another string array. There's more variation there. So what do we have to do? Well, we're going to need another text. So let's bang ourselves a duplicate of our small text, and we'll call it, I called it large cell, but it's really a long cell. I'll stick with the naming convention. Large cell text, there we go, and let's just bang that noise out because we don't actually need it. Because again, if we go back to the reference, we see, say, for example, this div here, every time we look at this cell, it's whenever it does appear, it's div. It doesn't change. It's not like it goes div and then changes to name. It's always that thing. So there's no noise running through where they are. It's just, there's kind of random text per cell. So in the string array, we add, I'll tell you what I'm going to do actually, just for the ease of time, is just grab this, just so I don't have to bang all this text in individually. I will, however, delete all this other stuff out of here so I can do this individually. So just in the long box, it's kind of like hashtag and then a cell spreadsheet looking kind of thing. I think maybe for this, the important thing would be just making sure that the string didn't expand the kind of bounds of the box that it was contained in. There are ways around this. Cavalry can do something where we have the text box active and we can shrink the text size based on the size of the box it needs to fit in, but we don't need to do that for this, so we don't worry about it. Okay, great. So straight away we can see we get a load of that first input here, string jail, and that's fine. But we want the variation. So let's do our classic noise thing in here. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to start putting these noises where they belong, otherwise it's going to get confusing. Excuse me. And then again, we don't want a noise. I'm a liar, because then that would change where a word was and when it changed. What we want is a random, because it's static, it doesn't have time running through it. And as standard, what random will do, which is nice, and it might be cool if noise did that as well, but I understand why it doesn't, is it gives us the top and bottom of our array. So as you can see here, we've got 7 inputs, and if we go into the random, you see it's given us 7 random variables, and again, as you can see here, it's giving us, and if we play this, we'll see that it's completely static. So it's giving us exactly what we want. But obviously we don't want to see that many. There was one extra step to this. You can see where we have B5, right? In the reference, there's kind of cells, and if you're familiar with spreadsheets, you know, they kind of go A1 through 1,000, B1 through 1,000, and, you know, so forth through the alphabet. Now we don't want to see loads of cell kind of names in this. So what I did here was I came down and again kind of expanded on string arrays by adding a string array into a string array, making a meta string array, and basically just add some variation into that variant, right? So if we come in here, and you'll start seeing that they'll start disappearing as I add more. But then if I say C2 or C3, sorry, G7, sector 7G, H1, and let's go, I don't know, N5, right? So now we're getting variation within the variations, and we could add another random into this, but I don't think we need to, because it seems fairly random anyway. That was just another extra little step that I saw, just to kind of add, you know, one extra layer of variation into it. Okay, and let's just call this color array. Sorry for flitting back and forth. We're going to call this blue white switcher color. Failed the spelling color there. Jesus. Color with a U. There we go. Okay, so we want these color arrays at top level, because we're going to end up putting color arrays into color arrays and switching them on and off with noise and stuff like that. So it's good that we can just access them directly and not have them parented underneath some kind of cell. Okay, great. So now what we need to do is turn off some of these long cells, because we really don't need to see that many. So there's a few ways we can do it. Let's add a noise, and we'll call this long cell viz noise, right? Just so we can kind of get a handle on it. Again, 0, 1, cellular noise. Let's use layer as seed and turn this to, like, I don't know, just add some variation to it. Now what we can do is take this noise that we've just made, and we can put it straight into the large cell array and put it on visibility, right? So shape visibility, and we'll suddenly see we get rid of like an incredible amount of them. So that's not too bad. That's doing a pretty good job of doing what we wanted to do. We could do it with a spacer object. I think I did that in the last tutorial, where we add another object and switch between the spacer object, which is nothing, and our long cell. I think this is working all right for now, though, so we'll kind of just take this as it is, because it seems to be running fairly quickly. There's probably still a little too many long cells, I'd say, just for the ref. Yeah, there's not so many. So let's add this in. Oh, I'm going to change the seed a bit because I don't like the way that looks. So if we go 0.5, we'll see none. So if we start adding them in, 0.75, 0.65, 0.6. That's looking all right. Not bad. Now, what isn't right about this against the reference? Let's have a look, right? So everything here is capitals. So we need to do that, right? And the way that we do it, sorry, I keep trying to speak up because of the complainers last time. They couldn't hear me. So I'll try my hardest to speak up. We need a string manipulator. And string manipulators are, again, a great little tool. Definitely check the documentation out, because it does a lot of stuff. But we only needed to do something quite simple here, and we needed to change case. So let's go change string case and just label it all caps. And then we can come in here, and just so we know that we are, I'll tell you what, actually, if you select two things that you want to do, if you select them both, and then you come to all caps and hold down Alt and grab this and drag that in and keep holding down Alt and then connect, it will connect to both things. I didn't know that for a long time, and I felt like a right mug when I eventually went back to one of the tutorials that I think was with Ian from Cavalry group, or seen Canva, and learnt that, and it saved me a hell of a lot of time. So definitely bear that in mind if you're having to collect a lot of things. Okay, and that's because it's getting a little bit messy up here. You know, we've got like things here. Let's make another little folder. Just add a group in and just call this utilities. There we are. And then we can put stuff inside of this utilities. Let's bang that in there. And this can go into here because that is doing something very specific to that. So we'll call this divide by 2. There we go. And maybe we can add this into another group and call this color arrays. There we are. And then we can pop that at the bottom and keep it nice and clean. Okay, great. So if we play this now, just so we kind of know where we're at, we've got essentially the base functions. And now what we need to do is add in that color functionality. And we'll go over that in a second on how to do that. Ahoy, hoy. So next step is going to be the color segment of this, and the way that I've done that is it's the same as the reference, is with an image sampler, which essentially looks at an underlying image and says kind of how, well, there's a few different ways, but basically it works like this. If you use a black and white kind of animation in the image sampler, it will then essentially say, where it's white, give me a value of 1, and where it's, say, black, give me a value of 0, and greys in between they'd increment up from 0 to 1. So what that would mean, like practically, is that if you had a cube with an image sampler attached to its scale, and you ran an animation through it where you had, say, a white bit in your animation, the cube would be at its largest, and then when it was black, the cube wouldn't be visible at all. Again, there's some good examples of this, you know, online. Again, check Cavalry's tutorials for how this works in a kind of rudimentary fashion, so you can understand what the fundamentals are doing. But for now, we'll just kind of jump in. So what I had to do was something like this. And this can be anything you want it to be. It could be a video that you found on YouTube. It doesn't have to be black and white either. It just helps because that's essentially how I think that's how it's working. It's looking at luminance values. I just made this, which is a circle. It's just an ellipse with a stroke. And there's a noise on its rotation, so it's kind of bobbing about. There's a noise going into the shape itself. So when I mean it's going into it itself, there's a deformer tab here where you can add a noise. Just be aware that if you do add a noise like that, you could do it as normal, so I didn't click that. But you need to come in here and turn off Bezier, because if you don't turn off Bezier, you'll get a shape like that. And that's kind of not what I wanted. And then I've just got a noise on the radius, so it looks like it's kind of getting larger, it's getting smaller, and it's going in and out. So I just animated that. Again, very simple. Just spat that out of Cavalry, brought it straight back in. Super, super simple. So the way, and essentially the way that that's going to work is, let me just bring that in now because it's been rendered so we can just see it here. Here you go, you've got something like this here. I think I rendered that out at a different aspect when I was doing this, so let's just scrooge it up a bit. Okay, so let's add an image sampler, and I'll just show you what it does. Image sampler. There you go. Image sampler work. We could do this with something that's called a material sampler, but it tends to be quite slow. So it's preferable to work this way, unless you absolutely need it live. It just makes more sense doing it this way. So if I drop that in here, let me get rid of this drive. You can see here that we get a kind of shadowy version of it, and we can turn the opacity up and down just so we can kind of see reference to what we're doing. So let's just turn it up for a second, and let's turn off our large cell array so we just have the small ones to deal with for now. And then let's put this image sampler like directly into the scale or something. So we should just be able to put this into shape scale if we do both of them, and then if we just turn this off. Can we turn it off? Yeah, there you go. And then if I play that, you'll see that we are only seeing, oh, that's actually quite a cool effect. I should have done this tutorial. I should have released this or something. You can see there that it's doing exactly how I explained before. It's where it's white, it's giving us a value of 1, and where it's dark, it's giving us a value of 0. So we are kind of revealing our cells there in this kind of nice pixely way. That's not what we're doing today. It's a cool effect, but let's just disconnect that for now. So let's do that and put our scale back to 1 and 1. Okay, so we know we've got that. We've got our driver. It's working how we want it to work, but we don't want it to drive scale. We want it to drive color. And essentially what we want it to do is make the cells that it sees this kind of a selection of these sheet errors. So if we click our ... menu in our, well, just next to where we see our preset names for palettes, we can say create array from palette, and that's what we want. We want to create a color array from this specific palette. And nicely, Cavalry has named all of these colors fancy names like salmon and medium orchid as opposed to high or low orchid. So we've got those now, so we can essentially say, great, let's use this image sampler to tell the cells when to be one color array versus another color array. So how do we do that? We add, before we do that, let's call this sheet error color array. Great, and then let's add another color array, no you, and call this cell color switcher. Messing that up there, switcher. There we go. And let's make that like that, and this just a different color. Oh, same color. Just so we can kind of see what we're doing. And then if we take our blue-white color switcher just here, because we know we're going to need that in a second anyway. And let's make this green. Great. So we've got three color arrays, and we're only going to use 2 of them, and 1 will act as a switch. There are other ways we could do it, but it's just convenient to do it. So if we come in here and we add 2, because we want 2 inputs, we want our blue white and we want our color. So let's add our blue white in here, and let's add our sheet error color into here. There we go, and now we've got that. So let's pop both of these inside there, and we can say, great, we don't just want to alternate between them. Again, we want a lovely little noise. So let's call this master color switcher. Let's call it switch noise, right? There we go. Again, 0, 1, use layer as seed. We can get into whether we loop this or not later. Cellular noise, 1.2, something like that. So now we've got this, and all we should have to do is come into, again, we're not dealing with the long cells for the moment, we'll just deal with the small cells. And if we come in here and go small cell, and we go fill color, here's what we'll see. We'll see that we are now getting a crazy, let's turn this image off. We're just getting crazy kind of noise of cells because we haven't linked that image sampler into the mix yet. So, and here's how we do that. This is where it starts getting interesting. So instead of the noise going into here, we can turn that off, and we can then add in our image sampler into that color switcher. So if we go add index, there we are. So now you can see here that we are essentially getting what was on the can of this tutorial as well. We're saying we're going to switch between this color, that color, and do have a nice little kind of color array switch going on. But the large cells still kind of aren't involved with this, and we need to make sure that they are. But what we have obviously here as well is that the large cells don't change from blue to white. They only, at the moment, they're kind of stay in this color. So we need another color array that switches purely between the off-white color that we have and the multiple color, and run it on the same, well, we run it on the same switch as we're running the small ones on. So if we add a color array in here, again, I may get myself muddled up as I'm doing this. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. I'm sure there are more efficient ways of doing this. So let's again add the color sheet error into here and just make this our little, I don't know, off-white color. And then we can call this long cell color switch. Great. And now if we bang this in here and we go fill color, great, we're going to see obviously it's random because, well, it's not random, it's alternating, but we don't want that. We want to turn off auto array index, and we want to come in and we want to add our image sampler once again as the driver for that. So now we'll see as it goes, if there's a long cell, they get colored, and the small cells get colored in the same way. Now, I didn't think this was very interesting. I didn't think it looked as good as the handcuffs that we were looking at for the reference. It's just kind of a bit blobby. And so I thought, what can we do here that might be quite interesting? And I'd just seen a tutorial, forgetting who it was by now, where they were explaining value solver. And now value solver, when I was showing it the first time, I was like, whoa, it's great. Essentially, it's like a decay. It's like animation decay, if you're familiar with, I guess, music, where, you know, you can run like a fall off through something, and then over time it'll lose the value that it had before. So if you had like an array of numbers, I could show you this, but it's easier to explain. If you just had like a grid of numbers and every single number was 5, and then when you ran a fall off through it, it went up to 10. As the fall off then comes back out of it, it will graduate back down to the number 5. So you'll start seeing like 9s and 8s and things like that in there. It's a really cool effect. So what that means for this is that we can essentially leave a delay on how long it takes for the cells to turn back to white and blue. So it's not just like a click, it's like our image sampler leaves a trace through our grid of numbers. So that's kind of what I did afterwards. I came in and added a lovely little value solver. So the way a value solver works, I think it needs to be kind of coming into a value. Well, we need a value anyway, because we essentially say we want to delay through these values or stagger through these values. So let's just bang that on 1. Let's add a value solver. Value solver, lovely stuff. So you can see here there's a few different options in here, and I won't pretend that I understand what they do. It's, again, I will link in the description the tutorial of the geezer that did quite a good explanation of this with a diagram. But again, Cavalry, Canva, they're going to have the tutorials, and kind of Ian or Chris explaining exactly how this does what it does and why. So watch that. Don't listen to me. Just, you know, do as I say. So if you turn this to multiply by value, and I'm going to ignore all the rest of this stuff, and you can turn this to kind of however you want. I think the fade value, the lower it is, the less fade, which would make sense. And like the higher it is, the more decay you get. We'll see. So inside the value solver, we want to add the value that we want to decay is our image sampler, or value solve is the image sampler. And then does the value solver go into the value, and then the value goes into the switch index. Let's see if this works. Kiss my face. Right, so that does work, but as you can see, we're getting way too much. It's like we've lost all semblance of the original animation driver, because you can see here what's happening. Let me turn that on so you get a sense of... Oh, does that disappear as we're doing it? Oh, is there an option to leave that on as it renders? It's not. That might be cool. But you can see there, you know, as we start, you can see that it's leaving a trail behind where the animation moves. Endlessly cool. And obviously there's a lot of practical applications that you could use that for. So now all we need to do is kind of come in and just like play with the values, right? So if we go 0.7, we should just start seeing slightly less decay. There you go. And now we're getting something that it's got a bit more feel to it. It's got a bit more, I don't know, it's just a bit nicer. It's just like leaving a delay, right? It's got a bit more kind of like a glitchy, kind of granular kind of effect on it, which is quite nice. It's another level of detail, right? And I think a lot of the time when I'm using Cavalry, it's levels of detail, and it's, well, how can, not to make it more complicated, but what's an easy win to just add another layer of depth here, and what can we do? And I think value solver a lot of the time, especially if you're using something that's you know, kind of like this, like celly and switchy. It just adds just that little bit of visual interest to it. Okay, so now we've got that, and essentially that's really the nuts and bolts of what I'd done, or what it was. I guess I think at the very least, I think this is kind of how I'd approach it, or to kind of build a scalable system. But there are a few other pieces in here that we kind of need to address. And if we watch this, you'll see that inside the color area, for a start, there's different text inputs. So we kind of want to add in another switch saying, right, if you're a cell inside the color area, you need to then display different string arrays, right? So let's do that, and we can talk about like adding more variation into the color in a second. So great. So once we're inside of the color, we want to say you need to change your array. So we now need to use the value solver as a switch for a string array, right? So let's do it first with the small cells. So let's add a string array. String array. Great. And we're going to call this white/color text, string switcher. Great. Okay, fine. So let's just add 2 for now, and we want to come in here and go, great, we've got a string array, and we'll call this white blue string array. Lovely business. And then let's drop that in here, right? And then the second string we want is going to be just something different. I can't actually remember what I established that was. So inside of that, it was, so we can see here that we've got kind of plus, there's an equal sign, there's like a 3 in the curly brackets, question mark, and all of that clobber. I've actually got this somewhere, so let me find that character mix. Is this it? No, that's the one. Right, let me grab this, because I don't want to have to bore you guys with putting that into there. So as you can see here, this is our kind of secondary array that we're going to be using. It kind of comes with the noise I built earlier, art attack style. So let's drop that into this string array switcher. Let's call this small cell color string array. Again, sorry for all these long names. I mean, I should have labeled these properly prior. But even now, you can get, when you're using like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 string arrays in a sequence or something, it'll get confusing later. So best to label now and worry less later. So let's just grab this here. So we've got white blue string array, small cell color string array, and we want to bang this inside of here. Lovely stuff. And then we want to take our new kind of master string array and drop that back into the small cell text string. You see, we're going to get some mad stuff happening because the switch is currently alternating. It's not using our value solver as its switch. So now if we come in, let's just drop the value solver into here and go color, white, color, master switch. God damn it. Switch. There we go. And now if we use that as the index here, we'll start seeing that we only see, although I feel like we're not. Let's play that. Let's see what happens. Oh, there you go. Yeah. We're getting that. Okay, so now that's going through, but this cellular noise isn't doing what we want. Oh no, sorry, it's this one. And it's because, and you'll see in a minute, we actually use 2 of these string arrays because we're going to add yet another switch in after this. So let's add the stagger back up to like 105. There we go, we got 6. It's just because there was no stagger essentially involved there. So now if we look through and we play, see, it's slowing down like a little bit now because we're kind of layering these things up. But now you can see where we have our color, we're getting a completely different set of randomized string inputs. And where we have our white, it's as before, right? So that's a nice little kind of effect that we've got going on there. What else did we have in here? Do the long inputs change? I believe the long inputs do change. So let me just check it if they do. Base grid, small box, long box inputs. Oh no, I don't think they do. They stay just as is, right? Long box inputs. Yeah, okay, so the long, no matter if it's color or white and blue, the inputs always stay the same for the long box. So we'll leave those alone. That's a layer of complexity we don't need to add on. We could, but we won't do it here. Why am I not seeing it? Do I need to play this now in order to make it appear? Okay, it's because I very foolishly made our composition shorter than the expected length. So now if we play, we should start seeing what we're expecting to see. There we go. Okay, so now what's missing from this? There is one more layer of, I don't know, complexity and detail and loveliness that kind of was in the original. And that is this, that as we go through, we start seeing these huge blocks of text take over. Now, I didn't get this exactly right. I'm sure Rob Farmer can illuminate us as to exactly how it went, to get these kind of like random huge patches with these other bits kind of like in there, but it's seemingly just at the edges, which makes me think it has something to do with the input. That maybe the handcuff input had kind of like an edge effect, a glow that it clicked through or something like that, that would give us, that we'd then be able to say, okay, great, look at the edge of this and apply a noise like that. But for now, I think the way that I did it, I just kind of added some extra switches into that noise there. We'll look at that in just a moment. Okay, so now we're going to add those kind of flicks in between the like I think I call them micro noise within the color section, and macro noise. So the micro noise is going to be as we see here, and then the macro noise is going to be like huge, like full takeover kind of stuff. So the way we do that is we add another, like one more step in before our white color switcher, basically. So we come in here and we find our small cell color string array, right? So we've now got, oh no, we don't. That's a string array, and we want the color switcher. Right, color cell switcher, duh. So here we've got blue cell color switcher and this color switcher here. So now what we need to do is add in kind of one different one here. So we need to add an array into here. So let's turn that off and let's add another array into here, and we'll call this color array, and we'll call this, drop this color in here, and we'll call this macro color noise array sound. So we've got this, and this is a micro sheet error color array, and now we want macro sheet error color. Almost had that type in done like flawlessly, had to fuck it up. And then let's add another thing in here. So now we've got two here, so let's add our micro in as the 0, and let's add the macro in on top. There we are. Okay, so cool. So at the moment this is pulling, so here we go. And this is what we want to do. We want to switch this. Yeah, we want to switch between these with a like really flat noise, right? So at the moment it's going to give us 1, 1. Hang on, is that, they're being controlled there. Color cell switcher, that's going between those two, so that's doing what we want it to do. Yeah, so in here we have to unauto index this, and if we go, wait, that's just making that go like that. So let's turn that off. In fact, no, that's fine. I don't care that if that's going like that, because, although actually we do, because, sorry, I'm talking to myself as I'm doing this. I'm trying to remember how I did it. You can see here, And you can see my mouse, can't you? Yeah, of course you can. We've got green, 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 green. As we go here, there's like lines. And if these were all colour, you'd see there was like lines going through because they're alternating. They're going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't want that. We want to add in a micro and a macro noise. So turn off your auto index on here, right? We're going to come in here and we're going to add in a, well, you guessed it, a noise behavior here. Well, let's call this micro noise. Micro noise. Great. And so 0, 1, cellular noise, and let's turn it, the scale up to something like that. Use layer of seed, right? And essentially we don't want it 0, 1. It's not binary, right? Because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 inputs. So we want to go here and go 6. And I find it hard to remember what I've talked about and why I haven't. Cavalry starts counting from 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, meaning we've got 7. So if you're 0 to 6 is 7. And you can see here now we've got all of these doing something nice, and now it's truly random, whereas before it was alternating. Great. So now we want to come into our macro sheet error and say we want to do, let's add in another noise, right? But let's, just so we can see what we're doing, change it to 1. So now we're seeing the macro noise, right? So we're seeing this noise. Let's turn both of these to, I don't know, blue. No. Let's turn both of these to orange and then both of these to purple, right? Okay, so if we start changing this noise, and let's put the 0, 6 because we want to see all of our selection, what we're getting is kind of what we expected. So let's go to cellular noise, right? And then we want to see 0. But okay, so we've turned the stagger down to 0, but the reason it's not giving us one flat color is because we have something down here called use position context enabled. If we turn that off, we'll see everything is one color, which is kind of what we want, but it's not exactly what we want. We want there to be a slight delay. So if we put 1, we start seeing like bands of color in there, which is quite cool. So something like this, right? And let's turn this time scale up to something like 10. So now if we just play this, we'll start seeing that there's like big bands of color kind of going through. Now it's kind of, there's too many bands, right? We've turned up the stagger too high. So if we go 0.2, 0.1, 0.05, and then turn this up even more, something like that, and 0.01. So now we should start seeing that we just start flicking through like big bands of color, which is kind of what we want, right? So let's put this 0.03, 0.05, 0.07. I want more color, 0.1, 0.09. Uh-oh, what's happening here? Okay, no, we're all right. Okay, fine. We'll just leave it on 0.9. A lot of this will kind of be suck and see. You know, you guys play with this how you think it's good. That's obviously too quick. Now I'm looking at it, so we can turn that down something like 10. So now we're getting the color that's switching. It's doing exactly what we want. We're kind of going from like quite a like a fine noise to a macro noise. But the last step to do is this, because at the moment we haven't said you need to start randomly selecting between one or the other. So this is how we do that. We come in here and we add a noise into here. Lovely stuff. And let's turn position context off and 0, 1 this time, because that is what we want. And let's turn this down to 0. And let's go cellular noise, because now what we're going to see is we're going to switch kind of like randomly between lots of noise and then the very, very flat noise at some point. But because the noise is too slow, let's do this. But we want to make sure that we see more micro noise and we see macro noise. So if we turn this to 0.5, we'll never see any macro noise. So let's just turn this to like 0.65 or something. So now very occasionally we should see a flick to kind of big bands of color. There you go, something like that. There you go. And let's use layer of seed. There you go, just like boom, 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 boom. There you go, we're starting to see like big bands of color. Now the only thing that's left to do is to then say, well, when we change the color, we need to change the string content of these small boxes. We can do it again. This would apply the same with long boxes as it would with short. So then we need to come in here to our string switcher, and we've got our small cell color string array. which is what we want, but we need 2 of these now, right? So we need to duplicate this, and we're going to call this array micro, and we're going to call this macro. And essentially the same thing is what we're going to do. And we're going to maybe put, do we need another string array here? String array, and let's call this small cell color string switch. Jesus, that's a lot of sounds. Don't try saying that if you've got a Lisp. Let's bang that into here. So let's use micro as the base and then use macro on top of that. And then it's going to alternate between the 2. We don't want that, so just go auto index for now. And so now we need to use the same noise that we were using before to run that from the color. So we need to use this inside of this as the index, and then we should start seeing this change, but we need to make sure that our macro is doing the same as the other one, so like something like 0.09, something like that. So now hopefully when it goes, why is that not doing what we want? It's because we haven't connected this to the string array in the small. So come back down, grab the kind of master string switcher that we just made and drop that into the small cell text and replace that. So now we should see if that color goes there. Ooh, but it's not purely connected to that. Does that mean we need to, because something's now not connected? Oh wait, no, that should have worked, because that's just coming from this, right? That just goes into here like this, that goes in there like that. Is it because this now needs, sorry, you've got to add our small cell color string switch into here and then change that for this one, right? Right, there we go. So now when we see big bands of color, we see them full of the kind of a singular string, right? Singular string value. So when it goes there, you see we just get a big band of kind of dollar signs. Great, okay. Great, I think that's everything. Sorry if that's, I mean, I got confused doing it. But again, it was just a really nice exercise for me in some of my downtime, just taking something that I thought looked cool and just seeing how maybe someone else's head worked and how they approached it, and a lot of kind of cool techniques, and a lot of good use cases for some kind of fundamental bits inside of Cavalry that I find myself using a lot of the time. Kind of values, value solvers, string arrays, color arrays. Again, really simple stuff. It's like if you're in cinema, I'll just play this kind of while we're kind of wrapping up here. It's like in Cinema 4D where, or After Effects, where people tend to overcomplicate stuff a lot and think, oh great, well I need to use X particles in order to make this particle condensation simulation. But like 9 times out of 10, it turns out when you look at the way it's made, it's actually done really, really simply with native tools in it, and there's no trickery. I think once when I saw a kind of talk done by man versus machine, they said it was a kind of shoe simulation, but really it was just done with like a bend deformer that made it look really like it was actually simulated, like they actually simulated a shoe, but they didn't. They just used a mesh deformer or something. And it's these things that you only realize when you kind of try and break things down into their composite pieces and rebuild them yourself, that you realize, oh, there's actually an easy way of doing this. And you can see there the effect that we've got. It's fairly close to the original. It's not exact, and I'm sure there's some kind of nuance there that I've missed. But there's a lot that you can like extrapolate from this, and there's a lot that you could do with some of these techniques. With I mean, just color switching. It's obviously a really powerful thing. So hopefully you've learned a little something. Hopefully the sound has been a little bit better as well. There'll be a link to my poor audio quality versions of my old things, but moving forward we've got the good microphone. Hopefully you'll be able to hear me, which is pretty big part of tutorials. And then we will jump on something else. I've got a list as long as my arm for other things I want to kind of remake like this. I don't know how successful I'll be, but it'd be great to hear if you guys kind of like seeing these things refined, or if you prefer seeing me fuck it up as we go a little bit, because a lot of the time when I do these things, I'll try and record them the first time, and then I'll kind of make mistakes as I go and then try and work around them. I don't know how useful it is for people to see you know, a really raw process of, you know, hitting an obstacle and go, oh, this doesn't work. And obviously there's some editing that will have to happen, but sometimes it's nice to not, because there are things I hit with this was like, you know, it's kind of a head scratch moment. And then you go away, you look at the documentation, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we could do it this way, and or we could do it that way. So if you would prefer seeing kind of unadulterated, unfiltered, like start to finish, like this is just how I did something, I can do that. I do think it's a little bit better with the benefit of hindsight recording these things, just so I can kind of cut out some of my nonsense, because there's enough of that anyway. But yeah, that's this one. Shout out to, again, let's just shout out to Rob Farmer. You know, again, sick utilization of like just all the tools that he's using here. Like really cool work that's kind of gone out just in general. I mean, you know, crazy fish stuff going on. Yeah, we could make that's pretty cool thing to try and remake. I am keen though to not just like glom on to one person and say, how do you do this? How did this work? So if you guys have seen anything you like, drop it in the comments or something, and we can maybe go over these things together, or do a live stream. I'd happily do that and just kind of work it out, and then I could actually have help as I'm sitting trying to work stuff out, which would, you know, it's always appreciated. But thanks anyway for sticking with me this time. Hopefully you've learned something. I know I've learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.